Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for the press briefing in advance of Abu Dhabi Art 2023. We're enormously looking forward to the upcoming week, and we wanted to share a few highlights and updates in advance of the fair. Abu Dhabi Art is held under the patronage of His Highness Sheikh Khalid bin Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi, Chairman of the Abu Dhabi Executive Council. Abu Dhabi Art is organised by the Department of Culture and Tourism, Abu Dhabi. And we're opening for our previews on Tuesday, the 21st of November, followed by our public days on the 22nd to the 26th of November 2023. Amongst the galleries participating, of which we have 90 in total, 54 are returning exhibitors and 36 are new, coming to Abu Dhabi for the first time for this year's edition. And this has been achieved by working with some phenomenal gallery representatives who've chosen to focus their research on specific geographies or curatorial topics. And they'll be sharing insights into that shortly. At the same time, with our returning galleries, we have a number of really interesting installations throughout the fair. We've invited some of them to participate with. And I'll draw your attention just to a few of the highlights in that realm. One is with Sean Kelly, which is returning this year. We have a very important work by Hugo McLeod, who came across to visit the UAE recently, last spring, spent some time in Al Ain, and in particular in the fruit markets, and has created this new major work, which is an inspiration from a trip to Al Ain. It's a large-scale painting, which is in fact made of single-use plastic, and it shows a stall in an otherwise, which is quite a solitary one, in an otherwise bustling fruit market. At the same time, I could tell you more about the work. It's a very special one, but I'm conscious of time. But I'll mention a few others. We have with Pi Artworks, which is a returning gallery, a special installation by Fatma Bouchak, and here these are Syrian Damascus rose. That have come across to the UAE, to Abu Dhabi, and been planted here in recent months and grafted with local roses. And it's exploring ideas around migration and setting up roots in new places and a sense of loss, but also hope in new possibilities. I also invited Lilia Ben Saleh, who is, again, a long-term gallery at the fair, to do a special presentation with Malika Temba, which you'll be able to see in the section around the atrium where she's located. Again, looking at the idea of marketplaces, climate change, sustainability, and I encourage you all to speak more with Lilia about those works as well. Beyond In and Around, we also have 54 returning exhibitors at the fair this year, one of whom is Tabri Art Space, who will be presenting a solo booth of works by Hazem Farb. Commencing his artistic journey with paint and pencil, he initially drew inspiration from the abstract expressionist movement. As his career developed, he began using contemporary collage and using archival objects and archival photographs. These new works that he's produced in the last few weeks are a return to charcoal on paper after a period of more than a decade. We also have at Abu Dhabi Art this year a very special presentation by Gallery One. They will be presenting a number of important artists, amongst whom Samia Halabi, Sliman Mansour, Taysir Barakat, Nabila Nani, and a series of works I'll highlight here by Walid Abu Shakra. Abu Shakra is is a pioneering artist who, during the early 1970s, looked more closely at abstract paintings with vibrant Islamic motifs, which sprang from his imagination. It was during the 1980s that he began drawing, inspired by childhood memories, captured in photographs that depict the serene beauty of olive and almond trees, rolling hills, and rugged rocks. These prints, such as this one, an olive tree in Ain Jarrar, are often scenes of desolation with the absence of human presence, and for example, plants or a solitary tree standing as a testament to his recollections. Renowned art critic Bulata eloquently described the essence of Chakra's work, emphasizing the sanctity imbued within each tree, stone, and wild plant found within these landscapes. To Abu Shakra, these natural elements possessed a profound collective sentiment, often reserved for human companionship by urban dwellers. But moving on to our focus sections, many of the galleries in which are totally new. This year, we've worked, as I mentioned, with a number of gallery representatives to draw on specific themes or topics or art histories. And in particular, joining us today, we have Manelli, Ricarda, and Chris. And not with us in this English briefing, she's just finished the Arabic one, is Essia. So I will remind you briefly of her focus section at the fair. But I'll be discussing now with our gallery reps what they've chosen to focus on. So it's my great pleasure to introduce Manelli, who is, of course, the curator, artist, daughter of the late prominent Iranian Farida Lashai, and she looks after her foundation and estate. And she's come to us this year with a really interesting proposal on sort of global art histories and modernities with a focus on Latin America. So I'm going to invite her to share a few insights on that, and I'll return shortly once she's finished her presentation. Thank you. Manelli, over to you.
Yes. Diala, first of all, thank you very much for this invitation. The idea really came about because I have relocated to California and I'm very geographically closer to Latin America, which I found to have a lot of similarities in culture in terms of warmth, in terms of social connections, in terms of history to where I came from Iran and from the Middle East or West Asia. And it was a very intrinsic attraction to go there and look at the art scene. And what I was confronted with was a very rich history of modern and contemporary art and a lot of work that had been done within the countries in Latin America on its histories. And we have been able to bring some galleries from Mexico, galleries from Brazil, from Colombia, from Argentina, that as this first encounter with the Middle East, they're offering a historical presentation. Like at Pablo Goebel, you have a historical presentation of Mexican art that that really covers Mexican painting and realism and muralist art, and then it goes into Mexican surrealist art from a protagonist like Frida Kahlo, who was not really aware of being part of a surrealist movement and being a surreal artist, to Leonora Carrington, who definitely had a lot of connection to the European surrealist movement that started in the 1920s and 1930s. But what is interesting is that a lot of these movements in Latin America had developed maybe or read in response to movements, global movements that are very Western centric, but some of them had actually developed completely separately and in parallel. And that is the point that is interesting for me, and I think it would be interesting for people in the region to see these parallel developments that are not necessarily derivative, they are not necessarily in response to a very Western-centric narration of history of art. And the other thing is that at many occasions, you have to read the histories of modernism in Latin America through reading its social context and through reading its geopolitical context and the histories of people and colonialism and their responses to it and how they have tackled identities and so on. But there is a possibility to also read it completely differently and not necessarily put so much emphasis on the geopolitical and social context, and read it through what it has really contributed to art history in terms of the aesthetics, in terms of form, in terms of materiality, and there has been a lot of work that has been done there. So I think one of the artists that is very interesting, there is a section and a booth that is dedicated to Brazilian neo-concretist movement, moving from concretist to neo-concretist with Franz Weismann and with Lygia Clark, who was one of the 4 or 5 people who had signed a manifesto of neo-concretism in Brazil. That is also in dialogue with a lot of geometric abstraction and kinetic art that has developed in Venezuela, that is also represented at Dan Galleria and La Cometa, with the works of Soto and Gego and the works of Carlos Cruz Diaz. And then there are a lot of contemporary artists who have been presented. I think one of the themes that come through and go through many different galleries is the surrealism, a surrealism that is connected to the surrealism in the West, and what we define, what we have always seen as surrealism, with a very important work of Robert Mata, with La Cometa, which was done for André Breton, and it was for the VVV magazine that the Surrealists were publishing in 1942, 1944, I think. And Carrington was also part of the magazine with Max Ernst and so on. And then that continues in the works of Carrington and Varro that are represented in Pablo Goebel's fine art. And then you have separate, surrealist tendencies that were really essentially Mexican and had developed completely separately in Mexico and then got connected because of the migration that happened from Europe to Mexico after the World War II. So these are some of the things, and I think we have a very strong presentation by accident, a women artist, and it shows that women artists were strong in Latin America, in Mexico, in Brazil, in Argentina, in Colombia. I think there is a lot of woven material. There is the continuity of the heritage of geometric abstraction, and kinetic art, but geometric abstraction that had different manifestations, whether it was in Brazil in terms of concretism, or it was in Venezuela with kinetic art and so on. And then there are young artists. There are 2 booths that are dedicated to emerging artists. One is to Josefina Concheta at Praxis, which is a gallery that is based both in Argentina and in New York. And she works with woven material, with tapestries that become structures. And I think it's very much a Latin American thing, and it can also very much connect with the art that we have seen a lot, and people are naturally um, attracted to produce in the Middle East, in West Asia, in the Arab world. And it is also very structured, it is sculptural, and it responds to geometric art. I think we're running short of time, and I'm available if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Manali, for that very brief overview of the incredible presentation you put together. Of course, as she mentions, for any questions, any follow-up interviews that anyone would like to do with Manali, please do contact us by email and let us know. We'll be happy to set that up. I'm now going to invite our third gallery representative, Chris, who's joining us with a really interesting proposal on modern and contemporary art histories from Hong Kong. And Chris is a Hong Kong-based writer and curator with a research focus on, the art ecosystem of Greater China, but especially the Hong Kong region. So, Chris, I'm going to invite you to share your insights with us on what you've put together for the fair this year, and thank you for joining us.
Yeah, so this year we have put together a list of galleries from Hong Kong. In total, we have 9 projects from 9 galleries in Hong Kong, and the Hong Kong sector is going to present 80 Hong Kong-based artists in total. So thanks to the art fair, we are able to present modern and contemporary art in the same sector, so which is quite interesting and potentially very helpful ways for us to understand what's going on what's going on and what happened in the history of the art in Hong Kong. So this year, I'm going to talk about these 3 examples I picked from the Hong Kong sector, so to let you have a idea about what we are going to see in this sector. The first artist I'm going to talk about is Louis Chen, presented by Hand Art TZ Gallery. Louis Chen is actually born in 1905 in Panama and moved to Hong Kong with his parents in 1910. So as one of the modern, one of the well-known masters of the modern art in China, Louis Chen is quite unique. I mean, if you think about his experience in Hong Kong, at that time Hong Kong was colonized by the British government, which means the localization and also the globalization of the region started far in advance if we compare to what's going on in mainland China at that time. So if you look into his practice, you can see a lot of influences from the West. Also, the traditional art of Chinese, like brush painting, ink painting, the ink on paper, has also great influence in his work. And what we are looking at is one of the works from 1960s. And interestingly, he painted about the dancing scene in Hong Kong. He named Arabic rhythms. It's interesting. So we don't know. We don't have any writing records about this painting. So we don't know if he traveled to the Middle East. But I think for in that period, his painting drew a lot of experience from his everyday life in Hong Kong. At that time, Hong Kong became the international harbor for a lot of people traveling in Asia, come to China as a harbor. So interestingly, we can see his painting early 60s become quite international in terms of the influence of culture. And also you can realize there's kind of a cubism and surrealism influence in his painting during this period. And this kind of influence started to emerge and evolve in his later art practice. Louis Chen is a very interesting people. He also was very critical people in the Hong Kong art circle. So he wrote about art criticism. He translated a lot of English art theories into Chinese. So we are very excited to bring him in one of the projects in Hong Kong Center. Yeah, the next example I'm going to talk about is Zheng Zhaocai, aka the King of Kowloon. So Zheng was born in Guangdong area in China and moved to Hong Kong in the 20s with his family. But so once he discovered a documentary a documentary record about his ancestors and family history, he claimed that his family owns the land of Kowloon. At that time, and then he started to writing this kind of graffiti calligraphy in the streets of Hong Kong for a very long time. So I think at the peak time, there are more than 50,000 pieces of these writings in the streets in Hong Kong, on the walls, on the lampposts, on the electric boxes. And he writes in this way to talk about the names in his family, trace back to this ancestor who owns the land of Kowloon. And in a way, that's so many of this writing in the street of Hong Kong art in Hong Kong city, it becomes something like visual culture and collective memory of Hong Kong people for a very long time. So so he was invited to the Venice Biennale, and also he was presented and collected by the major museums in Hong Kong. So what we are looking at is the opening show of M+ Museum, and this is the sector about Hong Kong art. In the beginning of the exhibition, when you walk into the exhibition, you will see this piece, this his graffiti writing on the doors. So that will be of interesting art to look into. And last, I'm going to talk about this young artist from Hong Kong called Mark Tu. Mark Tu was born in 1989, and so she's in her 30s, and she used a lot of so she is basically a conceptual artist. So he used a lot of ways of making arts, painting, drawing, video arts, stand-up comedy, and YouTube as a way to make art. But what we are looking here is a series work quite famous called Home Sweet Home. So basically, she used this American life simulation game called The Sims to create a kind of weird, bizarre, but also familiar scenes about the home. And he captured this image, and he sent this image. He set this image into 3 parts and sent them to this online commercial platform in China called Taobao, and asked different painters to paint these 3 parts for her. So by this way, she allows these external factors to be like intervening with her art making, also in a way to review this kind of reality, both humorous but also intellectually curious. Yeah, so I think it's going to be her first time to show in Abu Dhabi. And besides Mark Tu's work, we have several projects showing emerging artists from Hong Kong, and a lot of them they made brand new works for Abu Dhabi Art Fair. So that's very exciting to show all of them to all the audience in the Middle East. So last, I'm going to talk about, so in the Hong Kong sector, besides 9 projects we are going to show the arts, we also have a common space called Reading Room. And I invite some of the major institutions in Hong Kong, like M+ Museum, the Taekwondo Contemporary, Chat, Parasite, and Asian Art Archive to showcase their publications in Hong Kong. And we hope the audience, when they come to the Hong Kong focus sector, they will see examples of the modern contemporary art, but also they can understand the institutional practice in Hong Kong. I think that can be quite interesting to talk to the local audience, especially as I know the institutional development in this region becoming quite fast. So that kind of communication and exchange of information and ideas can be critical to our journey here. So yeah, basically that's it. So I welcome you to raise questions if you have more at the end of the sector.
Wonderful. Thank you, Chris. I really cannot wait to see these booths at the fair and to deep dive into your reading room, which I think is the first time we've had something like that at the fair. I think it's going to be fascinating. Thank you very much for those highlights. We have another gallery representative focusing on women artists in particular, Essia. She has participated earlier today in the Arabic press briefing with some thoughts on that. And we invite you to also discover that focus section at the fair. And with that, we're going to conclude. I thank everyone for sharing all their exciting projects with us today. I certainly can't wait to explore them in person in the upcoming days. And I look forward to seeing all of our visitors in the near future. Thank you and see you next week. Bye-bye.